Hi, welcome to Women Created and Called Live. I am Beth McGrain-Tran, your host, and today we are going to be talking about why is it so hard sometimes to make great decisions. Decisions are just something that we need to do every single day, right? If you're a mom, you have tons of decisions to make when it comes to raising your children and how you're going to run your household, and decisions in your marriage, decisions in your finances, all kinds of different decisions. That's if you're a mom. Even if you're not a mom, maybe you have a role in your job where making decisions is a huge part of it. And it affects not only you, but it can affect, like the whole company. It can affect all of the employees around you. Anyway, I just have noticed that this skill of making decisions is a super important one for all of us. And I think as women, we actually have unique equipment to do that. But if we're unaware of it, then that means that we aren't putting that unique equipment to good use. Anyway, today we're going to talk about why is it so difficult. So I threw out a little poll, if you will, on Facebook and just asked people. And so this is just a compilation of their responses and also my own thoughts that I have noticed when I've talked to other people about why we get hung up on, when we need to make a decision. So these are not in any particular order. If I put more time into it, I might have changed the order a little bit, but again, no particular order. So the first one is that we have a fear of making the wrong choice. Now, this one is very interesting because that's true. And it comes from a thought that there is a right choice. So if you have been following me for a little while, you may have heard me talk about the difference between intention and mechanism, or the way that you go about something. And this comes into play with this thought that I'm afraid I'm going to make the wrong choice, because there might be, in this decision you're making, there might be more than one right choice. And I think that sometimes is what slows me down when it's like, I know that I have the freedom to make lots of different choices here. And as somebody else mentioned, I have too many options. And so that can slow us down as far as, how fast we're able to make a decision. But the intention versus mechanism, I want you to think of it this way. For any choice that you do make, and sorry about that, it seems my internet got a little slow there, so just took a little pause. So for any choice that you do make and intention that you set, there might be like 1,000, 1,000,000 ways to go about it. And as long as there isn't an option in there that is immoral, you can try one, you can try them all. It's up to you. You do have the freedom to make that choice. So then you can just think, what do I want to do? What sounds like it would give me joy? What sounds like it would be great for my family? Maybe it would be great for, the others around me, my coworkers. Maybe it would be great for my community. So that's just one thing to keep in mind. And when we're worried about making the wrong choice, that is one thing to consider. There might be a whole bunch of right choices. And so maybe that helps lessen that fear a little bit. Another reason why making a great decision can be hard is when we choose confusion. So yes, I said choose confusion. Like, you might feel confused about something, and the truth is that you are choosing to stay there. You can choose not to stay there. You can choose to go ahead and pick one of those many options, right? And not be confused about it. I'm going to set my intention on this one option, and I'm going to go for it. And I'm not going to be confused about it. There are other ways to get out of confusion, and maybe that's asking questions. Maybe that's doing a little bit of research. There are lots of ways to choose to get into action even though you're feeling confused. You don't have to stay sitting in that confused feeling. You can still get into action even if you're feeling it a little bit. Another one that I see come up frequently and some of the women that I have coached and others that I've seen is, I simply don't want to. So sometimes when we're thinking about those options, we might know which option is a really good one to choose, but we simply don't want to choose it. We just don't want to step into doing whatever actions go along with that choice. And I would venture to say that this, I don't want to, is a surface thought. So it's important to ask yourself, what is underneath that thought? And that's as simple as asking, why? Why is it that I don't want to? And our brains will want to kind of shove that question away and dismiss it. But if you really sit with it for a minute, ask yourself, why is it that I don't want to do whatever actions go along with that choice? Then it makes your brain actually go to work to figure it out. If you don't accept, I don't know, as an answer, I don't know just shuts down your creativity, and your brain won't go to work to find an answer. But if you ask why and think about it for a minute, then you may find some answers. Now this also, what I wrote down in my notes here, this I don't want to can also be sort of a thought that can come from habitual sin, and also, because of that habitual sin, that is how we close ourselves off from being receptive to grace. And if we aren't being receptive to grace, then God doesn't have the opportunity to work and to create change in and through us. And so I think of it this way. I have these blinds next to me here. When I have them closed, not a whole lot of sunlight can get through, right? That's sort of like how we close ourselves off to grace. If I open, sorry, I had to pause again there. If I open the blinds, then of course more sunlight can get through. Let me just move my camera a little bit. There. So of course more sunlight can get through. And it's still not, a flood of sunlight. It's still filtered, but at least more can get through. So this is what happens when we have habitual sin, is we are choosing whether or not we're going to be receptive to God's grace. So, of course, the way to take care of that is to run to confession and receive the grace that is waiting for you there and the mercy. God is just waiting to love you. So that's a wonderful opportunity to do that. And then when you do that, you can be more open to receiving his grace. So I'm going to close these again, fix my lighting a little bit, and we will go on to the next one. Oh, before I do that, with this one, think about where in your life have you chosen to close the blinds on God's grace? Because there's a saying in the self-development world, the way that you do one thing is the way that you do everything. And I think very often this is true. So if you are closing yourself off and not being receptive to grace in one area of your life, very likely that is showing up in other areas of your life too. So really ask yourself and journal about it. Where in my life am I closing myself off from receiving and responding? Don't forget, we always have to respond to God's grace. Okay, so another reason why decisions can be so hard, and that is that choosing what is best for us, for others, choosing what is the best decision might mean discomfort. So that kind of goes along with the last one, right? I don't want to. Well, it could be that we are perceiving that what we would need to do then, if we make that choice, might feel uncomfortable. Well, with this one, I would just remind you that when we are called into something that is less comfortable, that is when growth happens. Because when we are uncomfortable like that, then God's grace can come in and abound and help us get through it. And when we look back on it, then you can see God's grace at work. And it's really amazing. Another reason why decisions can be so hard is I would rather choose something that is familiar. And this, again, is, stepping into something uncomfortable. Our brains really want to stick with what is familiar to us. That is a form of self-preservation. I'm going to stick with what's familiar because it's safe. And so that is another reason that you might avoid making the decision in the first place. Another one that I heard from someone is life around me is so loud. I know if you're a mom, this is definitely probably something that you relate to. But even if you're not, you could have a super busy life. And that's really what it is, right? If we're just so busy, it can be very hard for us to slow down and be quiet enough to actually create space where we can seek God's will. But it is so very important to find those moments of quiet so that you can connect with God. That quiet time is essential. And I would encourage you that these quiet times can even happen in the bathroom. It's true. I remember, when my kids were young, there were lots of times when the only quiet that I could find would be when I would go into the bathroom. And I would just take a moment and sometimes this was the only time I could think straight about what I needed to do next. There was a decision to make, right? What am I going to do next? What's the next thing? And I just needed a moment of quiet to do that. The other place that I found to be the best place, I wouldn't say the best, but a really great place to be quiet and think is in the shower. And of course, the very best place to do these things is in front of the Blessed Sacrament. But if you can't get there, then take advantage of your bathroom if you need to, if that's what it takes. Another reason that decisions can be so hard, and we sort of referred to this already, is that I have too many choices. And like I said, there might be a whole bunch of really great choices. So with this one, I would encourage you to actually start with a vision of what you would like your life to look like. If it's in a specific area, let's say the decision is, around your career. Maybe you have a decision related to your career. So if you think of a vision of what kind of work you would really enjoy, if you think maybe 2 or 3 years ahead, what is it that you see you doing? Best case scenario. Let your imagination take you there and then observe. And I love to do this, with clients, and just close your eyes and just imagine a scene, maybe 3 years from now, where you are feeling very happy and peaceful and content and fulfilled. You're feeling whatever feelings you want to be feeling in your life. Sometimes we think of those because that's what's missing in the present moment. Sometimes that's when we think of, oh, this is what I really want to be feeling. So if you close your eyes and you think of what that looks like, then you start to create a vision of what you would like your life to look like. And then think about why. Why is it important for you to have that scenario that you are imagining a few years from now? Think about how it impacts you, but also how does that make a difference for your family? How does that make a difference for your community? How does that make a difference for maybe your coworkers? And get really rooted in why it's important for you to create that, what you are imagining in that vision in your life. And of course, ask, in prayer, God, is this what you want for me? Is this the life that you imagine for me? Because that's ultimately what will bring you the best happiness, right? God's will is always the best. The next one, so after you have your vision and you think about why it's important, then from there, narrow your options. So if you're sitting in a place where you have too many options, start with the vision and that big why it's important, and then narrow the options based on that vision and that big why. Now, the next one of why decisions can be so hard, especially making a really great decision that is according to God's will, is fear of other people's opinions. Now, this usually comes from a form of people pleasing, We are worried about what other people will think about our decision. And somewhere, and very often, this comes from, the way that we were raised in our childhood. We were just in a pattern of trying to please other people. This definitely is my story, for sure. I always loved to please other people. And it's very interesting because it's also connected with the root sin of vanity. And vanity is not like, how you look on the outside necessarily. It can be. But it's also about the way that your actions look to other people. It's being concerned about what other people think of you. And yes, there are moments when that can serve you well, but if you are more concerned about what other people think instead of what God thinks, then that becomes a problem. So if this is you and you stumble with or get stuck in when you have a decision to make, because you're concerned about other people's opinions, you're not alone. Me too. I'm with you. Okay, and the last one that I wanted to mention here that someone brought up when I asked is self-doubt. So self-doubt can have all kinds of reasons why we're doubting ourselves, right? And it definitely can slow you down when you have a decision to make. But I think where this comes from is that your brain has all kinds of evidence and will offer you all kinds of reasons why you won't be able to do, whatever the option is that you're thinking of choosing in this decision. Or maybe you have all kinds of thoughts of self-doubt around almost all of the options, in this decision. But like I said, your brain has all of this evidence of why it won't work. And it's because it's trying to keep you safe and keep you with what's familiar and not venture out into what's uncomfortable and all of these other things that we just talked about. It's going to offer you all those reasons why you can't do that. Look at these other times when you failed. You're going to just fail again. This is what your brain is offering you, right? So what's interesting with this, and I wanted to touch on this a little bit, is this evidence collected is based on things that have happened in the past, and then you had a thought about that event. It was some kind of a circumstance. You had a thought and you kept believing that thought. For example, maybe it's maybe if it's in your job, maybe you want to take on a new project and your brain is offering you, you won't be able to do that. You don't have enough time. You're bad with time management. You are not a good leader. Nobody else is going to be on board and help you with this project. It could be any of those kinds of things. If you're a mom, maybe there is something that you would like to do. Maybe you're a mom who, I'm kind of on a business kick at the moment. Maybe you're a mom who is thinking about starting your own business and your brain is offering you all of these reasons why you won't be able to do that. And so you're doubting yourself. So what happened is like I said, there's something in your past that you had a thought and you kept thinking that thought and it became a belief. And that belief became part of your identity. This is the way that you identify yourself. You are, and I like to call them masks, because it's not really part of who you really are. It's not part of the woman that God is creating you to be. So you have these masks that you've been wearing. I'm not great with time management. I can't start a business and be a great mom at the same time. I can't even manage my household the way that I want to. How can I possibly add starting a business to it? All of these are simply beliefs that you have practiced for so long that they became a solid mask and you believe that it's part of you. But I'm here to tell you, it might not be. It might just be a mask. And if it's a mask, that means that you can choose to remove it. Now, how do we do that? You do that by learning about the real you, the real woman that God is creating you to be. How do you do that? You learn about who God is and who He says you are, because He's the one who created you, and so He knows. And the more that you root yourself in your real identity, the woman that God is creating you to be, the easier it is to make decisions from that place instead of from the place where you're wearing all of these masks. Some people might call it baggage from your past, right? It's just all of those times where you're, all of that evidence that your brain has collected with all the reasons why you can't try, all the reasons why it's not possible. But just think about it. If you were making your decisions from the real you, from the person, the woman that God says you are, and that He is creating you to be, in every moment of every day, He's working on you. He's pouring His grace into you so that you are equipped with exactly what you need to do His will. So if you make your decisions from that place and it comes time to actually act on that decision, you will know that you're equipped and you can do it. It is possible. So I really wanted you to know that today. But can you think of any other thoughts that you have about why it's hard to make decisions? If you have one of your own, I invite you to share it in the comments of this episode. And I would love to hear if you can think of some others. That would be great. So I offered several that we often think of for the first things that come to mind when we think about making a decision. All these reasons why it's gonna be hard. So what's the solution? I would offer 3 parts. And this is really oversimplifying, but it's helpful, I think. So the first thing is awareness of your thoughts and where they're coming from. So that goes back to thinking about, why is this decision hard? What am I thinking about my options here? And also awareness not only of what you're thinking in the present moment, but also awareness of that identity I was talking about. Is the identity that you are rooted in, is it coming from all the masks that you wear, or is it coming from the real you that God is creating you to be. In other words, who he says that you are. So, awareness of your thoughts and where they're coming from. The second part to the solution is simple steps to help you get into the action of discernment and ultimately arriving at a decision. Because another place we can get stuck is in the discernment itself, right? We might get started and then we might kind of stay there and just think, well, God hasn't given me the answer yet. Well, God invites you to make a choice because he is calling you forward. I love the analogy of, and I talk about it all the time, so I apologize if you've heard this many times before, but some of you I know haven't. So the story of Peter walking on the water, if you remember, there was a storm brewing and they saw far off, they saw a figure walking on the water. And they eventually realized that it was Jesus. I think Jesus said, hey, it's me, don't worry. And Peter said, Lord, if it is you, call me out to you. And so Jesus did call him to come out onto the water. And here's the key. Well, there's several key points in that story. Definitely, it's one of my favorites. But notice that Peter had to choose. Okay, we're talking about walking on water here. This is not something that most humans can do in the real world, right? So he had to make a choice. He had to choose to step out into something that could be very, very, very uncomfortable. He had to choose to step out of the boat and then continue to take the steps toward Jesus. And that is what God is calling you to do also. He is calling you to make a choice. First choice is to step out of the boat and then choose to keep your focus on him and keep going step by step. And yes, remember what happened to Peter when he took his focus off of Jesus and he looked at the wind and the waves around him instead. He sank. And Jesus caught him. But that just tells us what happens when we take our focus off of Jesus. So this is, so that second part of the solution is simple steps to get you into the action of discernment and ultimately arrive at a decision. Don't stay stuck in the discernment. And then the third part, this goes back to being afraid of making the wrong choice. This is where you get to trust in God's grace and mercy. And I would add, trust in his providence. Before and during and after this discernment and ultimately this decision that you are making. You get to trust God. Now, how do we know that we can trust God? There is an exercise that I think is really helpful. And if I remember correctly, it's part of the St. Ignatius examen prayer that we often do at the end of a day. And that is looking back on your day or, whatever time period, usually your day, and look for where you see that God's grace was present in that day. Look for where you see that God's grace was present during that day. And write it down. Now, the reason you're writing it down is that in these moments when you wonder if you can trust God, you wonder if he's going to be there for you, you wonder if he's going to show up and give you what you need, then you can look back into your journal or your notebook and you can see all of those other times when he was there for you. His grace did show up. Oh, look at that. He keeps his promises. Scripture tells us that he will not leave you alone. He will never leave you abandoned. Especially, well, always, but you can know this especially when he is calling you into something. He's not going to just abandon you. He's giving you everything that you need to do that, to not only make the choice, but to also see it through. It's up to you to decide to cooperate with that grace, with your actions. So, to get you started, I have created a new resource to help making great decisions easier for you. It starts with choosing to begin an intentional discernment process. Like I said, it starts with choosing to step out of the boat. That's the first step, right? So, it's not in the description of this episode yet, but it will be shortly. Go to the link in the description of this episode and you can grab your copy of the 10 simple steps to begin discernment. And if you missed it, check out last week's episode because I walked you through those 10 steps, step by step. I walked you through the whole process, step by step. Making decisions might feel hard, but staying stuck in indecision is really the hardest part. I have noticed for me, when I'm on the other side of that, I feel such a sense of relief that at least I have made a choice and now I can move forward. But when I'm stuck in the indecision part, I feel restless and confused and I feel overwhelmed and I feel anxiety that shows up as tightness in my chest and I feel all of the uncomfortable feelings. So I would venture to say that that is even harder than making a choice and moving forward. So instead, let's seek, discern, and act on God's will for your life. Let's begin. Go get that 10 steps, 10 simple steps to begin your discernment guide. Now, if you would like to discover how I can help you even more in a deeper way, then you can go to my calendar link and schedule a call. I will leave that in the description of this episode also. Let's chat. I am a person who loves to meet new people. So whether you are new to me or not, I love to chat with you. So let's discover together the best way that I can serve you. So again, you'll find that link in the description of this episode. And I will see you next time. Thank you so much for joining me. And until next time, God bless you and all those that you love. Bye.